During World War II, when supplies ran thin and men were stranded behind enemy lines, survival wasn't a theory. It was a daily test of will, ingenuity, and adaptation. Some of the techniques soldiers developed in those years were so effective they were classified or intentionally buried in field manuals. These weren't parlour tricks or folklore. They were methods that kept entire patrols alive when rations, shelter and heat ran out. Many were rediscovered decades later through declassified documents and field notes from engineers, medics and commandos who learned to survive in the harshest corners of the world. What's fascinating is that many of these forgotten tactics can still save lives today. Whether you're an outdoorsman, a prepper, or simply a student of survival history. Soldiers learned to create waterproof fire kits that could burn under rain or snow. Fire was everything. Without it, frostbite, infection and despair took over quickly. One trick that elite units like the British SAS and American mountain troops developed was the grease fire wrap. Standard-issue matches were useless in a storm, so soldiers would coat match heads with candle wax, bacon fat, or even boot grease. When needed, they scraped off the tip, struck it, and the flame burned hot enough to light damp wood. Some units went further, wrapping cotton from medical kits in paraffin and storing it inside spent shell casings, creating a reusable, storm-proof fire starter. For modern use, this method is still unbeatable. Melt a small amount of candle wax or animal fat, dip your matches or cotton in it, and store them in a waterproof film canister or brass tube. It's a century-old soldier's insurance policy against the elements. Improvised water filters were made from ammunition casings and charcoal. When filtration tablets ran out, soldiers had to improvise. Engineers in the Pacific Theatre learned to cut open a spent rifle casing, fill it with layers of charcoal, sand, and a small cloth plug, and pour collected rainwater through it. The charcoal absorbed impurities and neutralized odors, while the sand removed sediment. It wasn't laboratory-grade purification, but it kept men alive when disease-ridden jungle water was all they had. Today, the same principle applies. You can replicate it using a metal straw, bamboo, or a small bottle. Just layer in crushed charcoal from a fire, sand, and a bit of cloth, then pour slowly. It's a field-proven method that remains practical, especially for emergency kits where space is limited. Soldiers use grease-soaked cloth to waterproof boots, shelter halves, and even blankets. The official manuals discouraged using animal grease, claiming it degraded fabric, but soldiers knew better. When you're soaked for days in freezing mud, a little makeshift waterproofing could mean survival. Men in the Ardennes and Eastern Front mixed animal fat with beeswax and rubbed it into their canvas and wool gear. The result was a flexible, moisture-resistant layer that kept their feet and bedrolls dry. To apply it today, mix 2 parts beeswax with 1 part animal fat or petroleum jelly, heat gently, and brush it into fabric in thin layers. Once cooled, it forms a hydrophobic barrier that rivals modern waterproofing sprays. No chemistry lab required. Survival rations were hacked to last weeks longer using a forgotten dehydration method. Field rations spoiled quickly, especially in humid or tropical zones. Commandos learned to extend shelf life by drying meat and bread near low heat and smoke. The trick wasn't just drying, was using smoke from specific hardwoods like oak or birch, which released antibacterial compounds that preserved the food. In Norway and Finland, resistance fighters used this method to keep small jerky packs edible for over a month without refrigeration. This same technique works flawlessly today. If you have a small smoker or campfire, hang strips of meat or bread close enough to the heat to dry slowly over several hours, using clean hardwood smoke. It's one of those wartime improvisations that evolved into modern dehydrated rations and jerky making. Secret field medicine techniques used honey and charcoal to heal wounds and infections. When morphine and antibiotics ran short, medics relied on chemistry from nature. They mixed honey with crushed charcoal to create a thick black paste used to cover wounds. Honey acted as an antiseptic, drawing moisture from bacteria, while charcoal absorbed toxins and odour. It prevented gangrene in countless cases where evacuation was impossible. For a modern field equivalent, pure raw honey and activated charcoal powder can still do the same. You clean the wound, apply the paste thinly, and wrap lightly. You know, it's not a substitute for medical care, but in emergencies, it's the kind of old soldier's remedy that worked when nothing else did. Soldiers used their helmets and rifle parts as multi-tools for survival tasks. Every soldier was trained to see gear as more than its intended purpose. A steel helmet doubled as a cooking pot, water basin, and even a snow shovel. Rifle slings were cut and retied as snares. Bayonets were hammered into tent stakes. This adaptability was crucial in the field. When you carried everything on your back, every item had to serve multiple purposes. That principle still defines great survival training: redundancy through adaptability. In civilian survival practice, it means carrying tools that can be repurposed: a pot that can cook, purify water, and store food, or a knife that doubles as a fire striker. It's not about owning more gear, but using what you have smarter. Navigation by the body's senses was taught when compasses failed. Many soldiers in dense jungle or urban ruins just couldn't rely on compasses. Training manuals taught a method called directional anchoring. A soldier would note the wind direction, sun angle, and moss growth in the morning, and then check these same indicators every few hours. When disoriented, he'd mentally triangulate his position by comparing how those indicators shifted. Over time, the brain built an internal compass, a method actually that's been rediscovered by modern survival instructors as dead reckoning by pattern recall. You can apply this today by picking 2 fixed points, noting wind direction and using environmental cues like tree growth or shadow angles to track your orientation without a compass. Even the calm mind was a secret survival weapon. One of the most closely guarded techniques wasn't physical at all. It was psychological. Elite units were trained in breathing and visualization exercises to control panic and cold shock. American airmen who ditched into freezing waters were taught to inhale deeply for 4 seconds, exhale for 8, and repeat until heart rate stabilized. This slowed oxygen use and prevented the mental spiral that caused hypothermia faster than the cold itself. Practicing slow, controlled breathing before handling a survival task remains as effective today as it was in 1944. Panic wastes energy and heat. calmness preserves them. It's a technique so vital, some instructors called it the invisible ration, the one you always carry. The greatest secret was that survival depended on skill, not luck. Behind every one of these tricks was discipline, not desperation. Soldiers didn't rely on gadgets or chance. They relied on knowledge passed quietly among units and refined by necessity. Whether it was a wax match or a calm breath in icy water, each technique reminded them that survival was never accidental. For history enthusiasts and modern preppers alike, studying these wartime methods isn't nostalgia. It's rediscovering skills that built modern survival science. If this deep dive into lost soldier secrets inspired you, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more hidden chapters of wartime ingenuity. Share this with a fellow history buff who loves learning how courage, craftsmanship and raw intelligence kept the impossible alive.